They had 2 million followers, a registered farm business, and an income stream that most content creators spend years trying to build, and they announced they might walk away from all of it. That's Elizabeth and Lonnie Kirk, the couple behind Mountain Spring Homestead, one of the most followed homesteading channels in the United States, a woman-led operation built from scratch on 5 acres in the mountains of Washington state. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why the decision they made in 2024 was one that would have ended most families, and why for them it was the only logical choice. 2 million Instagram followers, 1.5 million on TikTok, over 2.3 million Facebook page likes, a registered farm LLC selling direct-to-community pasture-raised chicken, turkey, rabbit, and eggs, a YouTube channel active across multiple platforms including Rumble, an Etsy storefront. On paper, Mountain Spring Homestead is a media and agriculture empire built by 2 people on 5 rural acres. Most content creators who reach that scale spend the rest of their careers protecting it. They hire people. They build systems. They make the safest possible choice at every turn, because the safe choice is what got them there. Every decision from that point forward is about not losing what they have. Elizabeth Kirk did not make the safe choice. In the summer of 2024, she posted a video titled, "We Might Be Moving." No dramatic buildup, no teaser campaign, just a title that landed like a question mark in front of an audience that had spent years watching them build something from nothing. And here's the part that changes everything about what you just heard. That announcement meant something different because of where they started. Elizabeth and Lonnie did not come from farming backgrounds. Their own words describe the journey into homesteading not as a career decision, but as a calling, a desire, in their language, to reconnect with the land and live authentically. There was no family farm to inherit, no agricultural degree, no mentor who handed them a blueprint for what they were about to attempt. They chose 5 acres in north-central Washington, in the Chelan County area, an hour from the Columbia River, surrounded by high desert terrain and ponderosa pine. It is not the kind of land that forgives mistakes. Winters are hard. Growing seasons are short. Water requires planning. Every animal you add is another variable you cannot control. They started small, chickens first, then ducks, then goats. From-scratch cooking videos, preservation tutorials, the kind of content that feels like a neighbor showing you how something is done, not a brand performing expertise at you. Elizabeth's voice on camera carries the same quality, direct, warm, specific. She explains processes the way someone explains them when they actually did it wrong 3 times before getting it right. That authenticity is what built the numbers, not a viral moment, not a celebrity partnership, not a controversy, just consistent, accurate, useful content from 2 people who were genuinely living the life they were documenting. What happened next is the reason this story spread across the internet. The social media numbers are easy to find. What is harder to find, what most people scrolling through their content never stop to consider, is the operational philosophy behind Mountain Spring Homestead LLC. Because this is not a farm that does things the easy way, not even close. Mountain Spring Homestead does not use artificial lighting to extend their hens' egg production through winter. That is a standard practice across commercial and small-scale farms alike. You add a light source, you trick the chickens into thinking the days are longer, and you maintain output through the cold months. It is cheap. It is simple. Every farm that wants consistent egg revenue does it. The Kirks don't. They let the season dictate production. When daylight drops, egg supply drops. By their own description, they take most of the winter months off on egg sales entirely. Every animal on the property rotates to fresh pasture daily during the growing season. In winter, deep bedding in a greenhouse, no shortcuts, no synthetic acceleration. The feed, the timing, the processing, all of it is calibrated to what the land and the animals actually need, not what the quarterly revenue needs. This is not a farm optimized for income. It is a farm optimized for the way Elizabeth and Lonnie believe farming should actually work. Local, regenerative, honest. That matters because it tells you something specific about the kind of people who would post the words, "We might be moving," to an audience of millions. These are not people who act on impulse. Every choice on this farm is deliberate. Every policy is there because they thought it through and chose the harder path anyway. Most people who know this story stop here, but the real story starts right now. June 2024. The video title appears, "We Might Be Moving." For most channels, a title like that is content strategy, the vague tease, the ambiguity that drives clicks. But for a channel that had built its entire identity around specificity, around showing exactly what they were doing and why, the phrase carried weight. Within weeks, a follow-up appeared. Dream Homestead Update. Then more, a series of posts and videos threading a story about something they were pursuing, a property, a plan, a larger version of what they had already built. Think about what that actually means in practical terms. They had built the farm from zero. The infrastructure, the greenhouse, the pasture rotation systems, the goat pens, the processing setup, represented years of physical labor and compounding knowledge. The community relationships in Orondo and Chelan County were real. Customers who knew their name, neighbors who knew their animals. A local business presence registered with the North Central Washington Economic Development District. They were not considering moving across town. They were weighing whether to dismantle or redirect a fully operational agricultural and media business to chase something bigger. And that's when the decision was made, the one nobody around them saw coming. To understand why this decision was different, you need to understand what walking away from it would have cost. The social media following is the visible part. The less visible part is the infrastructure of trust. 2 million Instagram followers did not follow Mountain Spring Homestead because of an algorithm. They followed because Elizabeth and Lonnie showed up on the same land, with the same animals, doing the same things, season after season. The continuity is the product. The consistency is what they're there for. Homesteading audiences are not casual. The people who subscribe to channels like Mountain Spring Homestead are not scrolling for entertainment the way someone scrolls through short-form comedy. They are following a life. They are watching because they are either living something similar or they want to. The relationship between channel and audience is closer to a correspondence than a broadcast. When you announce you might be moving that life, you are not just announcing a change of address. You are putting the story itself in question. And a story that is in question is a story that viewers stop trusting. Channels have folded for less. The homesteading niche is full of families who tried to scale or move or pivot and lost the audience that made the original thing work. The trust is not transferable. It is earned specifically in a specific place, with specific animals, over specific years. At this point in the story, most people walked away. What she did instead is the part nobody talks about. While the move decision was playing out, something else was happening in the background that most casual viewers would have missed entirely. Mountain Spring Homestead was not just growing on YouTube. The channel had been building a simultaneous presence on Rumble, the alternative video platform that had gained significant traction among rural and outdoor content creators since 2022. Elizabeth's TikTok presence had grown to 1.5 million followers with over 19 million likes. The Facebook page sat at 2.3 million. The website was active. The Etsy store was running. There was a newsletter, a blog. This is not the footprint of a creator who stumbled into an audience. This is a deliberate multi-platform architecture. It means that if any single platform changes its algorithm, changes its monetization policy, or simply stops performing, the business does not collapse. The audience lives in too many places to be lost in any one of them. That kind of thinking takes time to build, and it is almost never discussed when people talk about homesteading channels. The conversation is always about the animals, the recipes, the aesthetic of the lifestyle. The structural intelligence behind how Elizabeth was running the business was quietly happening underneath all of it. She never talked about this publicly until now. By June 2025, something had clarified. Elizabeth posted a new homestead tour video. The language in the accompanying post was reflective, almost valedictory in tone. She wrote about the moment they first set foot on this 5-acre slice of Washington soil. She wrote about dreaming of something simple, meaningful, and rooted in family values. She described the land as a sanctuary. That is not the language of someone who has abandoned something. That is the language of someone who has come back to it or come through it and chosen to be present with it in a way they perhaps weren't before the question was raised. What that tells us is this: the decision of 2024, whatever it ultimately looked like in practice, whether they moved, expanded, added property, or decided to stay and deepen what they already had, did not break what they built. The farm was still operating. The channel was still posting. The audience was still there. That is not a small thing. Most families who publicly consider uprooting a functioning life do not end up back in the same place with a stronger sense of why it mattered. Most families who post, "We might be moving," either move and lose the thread of what they were building, or stay and never fully resolve the question that caused the announcement in the first place. And if you think that was surprising, stay with me, because this next part is why the whole story matters. Here is the thing about Mountain Spring Homestead that most coverage of this channel entirely misses. Elizabeth Kirk did not become one of the most followed homesteading creators in the country because she has a picturesque farm. Plenty of people have picturesque farms. She built that following because she was willing to show the part that most people hide. She showed the winter months without eggs, the times the pasture rotation meant more labor, not less, the processing days, the decisions that cost money and time and yield nothing that shows up well on camera. The no artificial light policy does not make for dramatic content. It just makes for honest content. That honesty is what the "We Might Be Moving" video was too. She did not package it as a story with a clean arc. She did not present it as a decision already made and rationally resolved. She shared the weight of it as she was still holding it. That is unusually hard to do in front of an audience of millions, where every expression of uncertainty can be read as instability, and the audience stayed. Because they had been trained over years of watching her to understand that uncertainty on Mountain Spring Homestead is not a warning sign. It is just what honest farming looks like. The decision that most families would never survive was not just the question of whether to move. It was the decision to be publicly uncertain about it, to carry a question that size in front of 2 million people and trust that they could handle it. Most people who run something that large can't do that. They have too much to protect. Elizabeth and Lonnie Kirk built something different, a following so grounded in reality that it could absorb a genuine question without falling apart. The real story of Mountain Spring Homestead is a story about what happens when the thing you built is strong enough to survive your doubt about it. Elizabeth and Lonnie are heading into whatever comes next, with the farm still running, the community still intact, and an audience that has now watched them face a real crossroads and come through it. Whatever the Dream Homestead update ultimately delivered, whether it was a new property, an expansion, or simply a renewed clarity about the 5 acres they already had, the channel is still there, still posting, still showing the same honest work in the same honest way. Here is the question worth sitting with. If you had built something that hundreds of thousands of people relied on for their daily dose of real life, a farm, a business, a community, and you found something bigger on the horizon, Would you risk it? Or would you protect what you had and let the bigger dream wait? Would you have made the same move Elizabeth Kirk made? Or would that have been too much to put on the line?